Twilight Show with Nathan Ginn on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
And Croeso, welcome to the show. Welcome to sunny South Wales. And I am excited about the show tonight. It is sometimes when I listen to Teachers Talk Radio, it is for my own CPD. Sometimes it is for my enjoyment. And sometimes I get a show where it is something that I really need. And talking about how we can eat a little healthier and be a little healthier and how we can protect our well-being tonight on tonight's show is something that certainly I need, and judging by some of the responses we've had across our social media platforms, it is something that a lot of teachers need, have excuses, have worries, something around that. Now, our first guest for the show, I believe, is with us already, and that is Charlie, who is the Teachers Health Coach. Charlie, are you there?
Hey, Nathan, how are you doing, mate?
Hi, yep, welcome to Teachers Talk Radio.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No, brilliant. So I introduced you there as the Teacher's Health Coach. Now, that's your Instagram title. If anyone's looking for you, they can find you on Instagram. I do follow you on Instagram. My sister has messaged me saying she follows you on Instagram, hopefully for the health tips. But, you know, so a lot of people are finding you there. What is it? What is it that you're doing as the Teacher Health Coach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'm a nutritionist. I'm still actually a part-time teacher as well, working 2 days a week. And essentially, I work with my clients. We call ourselves the teachers team on improving our health and well-being through our diet, movement. We look at everything: exercise, stress, sleep, habits, mindset. We really do go kind of all in. And yeah, we'll work with the team on those kinds of factors. And as part of the team at the moment, we've got a real kind of mix of school staff and educators. We've got some deputy heads in there. We've got some Senkos, class teachers, HLTAs. It's just a really good community of teachers who are all kind of looking to improve their health and well-being.
That's fantastic. And as I say, there's a few bits there that we'll get into unpicking. But you said that you were a teacher, you trained as a teacher. Can you tell us a little bit kind of about your journey then?
Yeah, of course. So I've been teaching for 7 years, just going into my 8th year now. And all of those years have been kind of across Key Stage 2. I've done year 3, 4, done a couple of years in year 6, and done year 5, which is kind of where I'm currently at. Like I said, been teaching for 7 years. Straight after graduating, I moved abroad and I taught at an international school, well, 2 international schools in Thailand. And after a couple of years of teaching abroad, decided the time was right to kind of come back home to England and to kind of start building my teaching career over here. And I've been at my current school ever since returning. So it's kind of coming up for just over 5 years now. And I've literally just made the move to part-time to give me that little bit more time, flexibility to be able to run the coaching business and to kind of run and work with the teachers team. Obviously, go on.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, obviously, you know, as with any kind of journey, there's always going to be ups and downs. And kind of probably about 3.5, 4 years ago, I had kind of my own experiences with mental health and kind of stress. To be honest with you, it's not really something that I talk too much about on my platforms. It's something that I talk about quite a lot with the teachers team, but haven't really kind of put it on social media yet. But there was a few kind of bits going on there. If you want me to kind of dive into that.
No, I just before we sort of get into some of those, I guess why it's important to be healthy, because I imagine you'd say that those things are kind of interlinked. But before we get into that, I just wanted to ask if you'd always been a healthy person. You know, I've seen your Instagram. There are some photos on there where you look like a men's health cover model. You know, have you always been sporty? Have you always been into it? Is that how it got started for you?
Not at all. No. It's been a very kind of up and down journey. To be honest, I was never really a sporty kid. I played football and probably spent more time on the bench, to be honest, than on the pitch. Same with rugby as well. Wasn't very good at that. Didn't really stick with that for very long. So I've definitely not been into sport my whole life. There was a period of probably about a year where, like, yeah, as you say, I was very much into kind of the bodybuilding side of things. few years ago, and I even did a photo shoot, which looking back now is a little bit cringeworthy, and definitely not something that I do anymore. But yeah, that was kind of a bit of a period of my journey as well.
Okay, well, no, it's just I always find it really interesting to kind of find out, but particularly, I guess, as a fitness person, and maybe we'll talk about this a bit later. Is staying, one of those, is staying fit a bit like PPA for you in a sense as a fitness instructor? People would assume that you'd be living this stuff, and you do live a healthy life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I live a healthy, very, very balanced lifestyle. I like a glass of beer. I like going out for food. I like takeaways, which I'm sure we'll kind of get into later on. And being healthy isn't just eating chicken, broccoli, and rice. It's not just avoiding all chocolate and never having a social life. It's a real balance. That's what kind of health means to me. So I am a healthy person. I have a very balanced kind of approach to life, both with kind of my nutrition, my approach to school and teaching as well, but also kind of with exercise as well.
Okay, well, I think you probably won over a lot of our listeners with the balance. You sound like exactly the kind of person that I want to take advice from on this. I don't want to be, right out there and peak physical fitness, but I definitely need some improvement on it, and I'm sure a few of our listeners will as well. It's worth me saying to our listeners, I can see a few of you in the studio. If you want to text in, if you want to call in and ask either Charlie or myself a question or join the conversation, you can do. This is Teachers Talk Radio after all, so you can join us to listen in. So Charlie, I guess one of the things for me is you've defined yourself as the teacher's health coach. Obviously, you are a teacher. Is that something that you saw there was a gap in the market? Is it that teachers need something different here? Are we unique in that way?
I think, yeah. I definitely think, obviously, coming from being a teacher for a few years, I definitely kind of spotted something within my own habits, within my own lifestyle, and kind of within my colleagues and the wider kind of schools in the community as well, whereby teachers have almost more challenges than the average job, in my opinion. We've got the time we spend in school, we've got the mental and physical tiredness, just the mental capacity that's used up with day-to-day teaching. And I'm not discounting any other career paths. I know everything's got their challenges, but teachers particularly, we've got the extra responsibilities of calling parents, subject leadership, staff meetings. And I just noticed throughout kind of all the teachers I knew, and myself included, my partner is also a teacher, lots of people were exhausted, had little headspace to look at their own health and well-being. And lots of people were kind of overly stressed, and this was kind of impacting on their overall health. So yeah, I definitely kind of spotted that there was a pool of people who could really do a bit of support in this area.
Now, as I say, we had quite a response. We had over 110 people telling us kind of on Twitter from one post telling us their different issues, their different problems, what was stopping them eating more healthily. And what are some of the things that you hear from your clients about that? What's stopping teachers from, what are they finding hard? Why do they need the help with this?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, there are lots of kind of areas that contribute to this and kind of bring up these barriers. But some of the main ones are obviously stress and overwhelm and workload. There's obviously a lot of mental health aspects as well that I kind of touch on with my clients. A lot of mindset around food, relationships with food. Lots of teachers I've noticed try and do everything at once, try and balance it all. And I know that lots of my clients, when we first start our journey together, start off by trying to be perfect, kind of, eat healthily in air quotes. Sometimes just knowing how to kind of keep things simple, easy and accessible is a real barrier for people. But also there's the other side of it. There's the being compassionate and empathetic with themselves and their own journeys, and understanding that it's not kind of an on-off switch. It's not I'm either being healthy or I'm not being healthy. That it's more of a spectrum. And lots of the people that I work with have big kind of mindset shifts around food. There are unfortunately a lot of myths out there in the fitness industry. Things like sugar being bad, even though, for example, a potato is made up of sugars, different size chains of sugars. So there's lots and lots of myths out there, and I think the myths and the misinformation is also one of the big barriers for not just teachers, for everyone. But like I said, stress and workload is definitely a big one for my clients.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I noticed, particularly from your Instagram, is some of the things that you share there of, there was one of them, a post that I saw where it was just, which of the bags of crisps sort of, have however much I think it was, or possibly it was biscuits, but it was something like that, and a table of, very visual that I could see and just go, okay, I've got some ups and downs there. I can be slightly better. I can be slightly worse. And I think maybe a lot of teachers, but certainly my problem is that I'm kind of either boom or bust on this. I always feel like, and it's kind of like, oh, I've had a terrible day. That's it. Everything's out the window. I'm in the staff room, raiding the cookie jar and eating cakes, and and that's it. But you're saying it doesn't have to be that way.
No, definitely not. And the main, I've tried for a few years to kind of, distill this down into kind of almost a visual image for people. But the best way I can kind of describe it is a lot of people, myself included, for many, many years, have kind of a black and white, on, off, good, bad kind of mindset around food and exercise. Where in reality, the most useful way we can think about it, and the most actual kind of practical way to think about it, is more like a spectrum. So we can have this scale, almost like a sliding scale, from less optimal on one side, and again, that's not saying bad, that's just saying slightly less optimal, all the way through to kind of a bit more optimal. So rather than two camps, black and white, like you say, I've had this food, it's in the naughty camp. Okay, now the rest of the day's ruined, the rest of the week's ruined, I'll start again Monday. Rather than having that mindset around things, we can think about it on this scale. So let's say I wake up Monday morning, my alarm doesn't go off and I'm running late. So I grab something that I wasn't planning on having for breakfast. Maybe I missed the gym, I haven't got my walk in. Obviously, that's slightly more towards the less optimal side of things. But there's nothing to say that I can't make the habits and the food that I eat throughout the rest of the day higher towards that more optimal side, and actually kind of bring my day back and end it on an average kind of, net average of a really positive day. So rather than thinking black and white, I always encourage people to think on a spectrum instead.
Okay, so hopefully I'll get some tips off you later about what that kind of looks like in practice, the kind of things I can be doing. But for me to make this change to my life, or for anyone listening, beyond this kind of notion that I have of that it is healthier, and obviously I understand that I don't want to get physically overweight, but what else is this kind of poor diet doing to me as a teacher?
Yes, I think one of them, again, going back to the team, and I always take most of my inspiration, most of my kind of ideas from what the team kind of tell me and their problems. The big one that I hear from a lot of teachers, either just friends and colleagues or from the team, is energy. I think a lot of people struggle with energy, whether it's getting up in the morning, whether it is energy at that post lunch slump, whether it's 3:30, you're trying to mark your books or whatever, you're sitting in a staff meeting, you're just nodding off. Energy is a really, really big one, and just by kind of making a few tweaks, we could look at our hydration, we could look at our protein intake, we could look at fruits and veggies, and obviously we can look at sleep. That would be the big one there. We can really increase our energy, and I feel like if we are more energized, we've got more patience with the children, we are gonna give our best selves. I know it's a bit cheesy, but we're going to be able to give our families, our classes, our colleagues our best selves. So energy is a huge, huge one there. And of course, it is a bit of a cycle. If our energy is low, we're going to reach for things where the food quality is a bit lower. And then that's going to mean that we are going to sleep a bit more poorly. Our stress levels are going to be higher, and therefore we're going to have low energy. And it is a cycle. It repeats itself. And I think so many teachers find themselves in this spiral, either positively or negatively.
Yeah, I think what you're describing there is you're describing me at the end of the term. And I guess for your clients, it must be quite helpful for them, or helpful to you as the coach, that you understand school life. Because when you're talking about it there, I've never spoken to someone, when either at the gym or whatever it is that I've been doing, who actually has kind of understood why I don't do anything on the Friday at the end of term. That must be quite refreshing for some people.
Yeah, I definitely think it's why a lot of the team do choose to work with me over maybe somebody else. And it's definitely something that I'm always going to keep my foot in teaching, whether that's part time or whatever kind of context, because it allows me to kind of have so much more in common with my clients. And when they say, our PPA was delayed, we didn't get PPA, so this changed, I was in class, wasn't expecting this, missed my workout. I get it. And I can completely kind of understand how teaching can sometimes be a little bit kind of less optimal in terms of our health and well-being.
Yeah, fully. And I mean, I guess, but before we move on to some tweets, because I want to share some of the tweets that we've had in and get your opinion on some of these comments that I guess people are making about why they are finding it hard to make a healthy move. I will describe for listeners, and they will be horrified at this, because I do occasionally come across I do running and things like that, and I sound healthy. But certainly towards the end of this term in particular, my lunch was mainly consisting of a tin of hot dog sausages and half a block of cheese. I wouldn't have breakfast. So my daily routine would be get up feeling tired, have 3 cups of coffee at home, no breakfast, go into work, by about 6:30, have another 2 cups of coffee, maybe around 11 o'clock, I was as a deputy head at this point, so I wasn't class-based, eat half a tin of hot dog sausages cold, half a block of cheese, and I'd just be cramming them into my mouth. Sobia is just texting saying, wow, some days I don't even have time for lunch. I think that's something we'll come on to a little bit as well. And then I'd go home and I'd be tired, and I'd probably have some cold pizza out of the fridge that I'd ordered for takeaway the night before, not feel too tired to prepare anything, wake up the next day, same routine again. And that's part, I guess, of that, I'm in a downward spiral at that point, right?
Yeah, and it's finding the place. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about it later. And it's never about being perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Like I started with, it's all balanced. The takeaway is absolutely fine. Incorporating hot dogs into your diet is absolutely fine. There's never any bad negative food, but it's finding that place for you where you can kind of intervene in that spiral and kind of say, right, I don't need to go from what you've just described to chicken salads and 9 hours sleep and 3 liters of water a day. I don't need to go from 0 to 60. What could I do right now just to intervene, just to give myself that mental break? So it could literally be a 5-minute walk. It could just be just having a glass of water. And I know that sounds very, very simple, and it sounds almost negligible in the grand scheme of things. And I guess it is, but it's about what follows from that intervention there.
So I guess I'm not aiming to be, the first step, the start of this year, I had in my head, and I imagine a lot of people listening will have in their head, or, who listen back to this, sort of a grand scheme of, I'm going to start this year off right. I'm going to have all of my packed lunches, chicken and salad prepped every Sunday, and I'm going to do that. And, I'm going to be getting my sleep, and I've got my new bottle of water that I'm going to be drinking. And actually that's still, even with the best intentions, I'm still kind of, I guess, creating that boom bust mentality for myself, because a week in, I'm going to drop off. Whereas you're saying, actually, it's not about being healthy. It's about being healthier each week, I guess. Yeah,
definitely. You summed it up perfectly there. It's almost like that 1%, if you were to make 1% change every single week from, now to this time next year, you'll be like over 50% better. So we really need to not underestimate those tiny changes. So, for example, let's say, going back to your hot dogs, you having a whole tin a day for lunch. Maybe it's that you just half a tin a day, and maybe you put a couple of veggies with it. So it's never going from 0 to 60. It's about those really small changes. And I think as well, it's great. Sometimes a fresh start can be really brilliant. So maybe someone like you just described will be able to sustain that for a few weeks or a month or even a few months. And that's brilliant for some people. And that's the other thing, everyone's individual. For some people that works, that clean slate, that fresh start. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. For a lot of people, the momentum behind it wanes. And I think something else I talk to the team about a lot, it's about momentum rather than motivation. Because motivation is that feeling of doing what you want to do, or doing something when you want to do it, Whereas momentum is something that it's a feeling of progress, a feeling of moving forward. And momentum is amazing because we can create momentum. Whereas motivation comes and goes as and when external conditions deem it to. So momentum is definitely going to be one over motivation. And also, just on that note, maybe a bit of accountability in there could go a long way.
Yeah, and I guess, when you talk about that motivation as well, I guess for teachers in particular, there's certain times of the year then that you'll be recognizing, actually, I understand. It was parents' evening. You had 2 nights this week where it was, parents' evening. You're at school till 8 o'clock. You know, we understand that happens to teachers. High stress moments, and I imagine people talking around exam periods. There's a different calendar for teachers, I guess, to what some other professions.
Yeah, definitely. And I know in some schools who are kind of doing work on kind of well-being and things and bits and bobs, that they're sometimes called like tension points.
Charlie, I think you just muted yourself there.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
You're back on again.
I'm back. Fantastic. Yeah, like I was saying, some schools are kind of talking about pinch points and tension points throughout the school year. And it's exactly the same with teachers in their calendars. So a really handy, just quick exercise you can do, and I know most teachers do this anyway, but just mapping out those times in the week and the months coming up of, where, okay, I might not be able to go for a walk tonight. I might not be able to prep my lunch. Maybe I need to kind of tweak things this week. And again, appreciating and being compassionate with yourself that, yeah, there'll be weeks where you do get a takeaway, and that's absolutely fine. But as long as it's not every single night, and as long as it's not the majority, and something I talk about with my clients is this kind of 80-20 rule. If we can eat, healthier foods kind of 80% of the time, and 20% of the time, we enjoy our diet. We have those more maybe higher calorie, maybe lower nutrient foods. We can enjoy that balanced diet, and it's just about getting that kind of that balance right, getting those percentages right, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that is such useful sort of advice for me going into this new year, because I've always struggled with that. I have good intentions, but I guess it's those pinch points that you did describe, and for me, those pinch points are not so much a pinch point as a cliff for my health and well-being that I kind of just shoot off, and then it takes me a long time to get back up. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm going to read through some tweets. We'll do some kind of workshopping of our some of our listeners' issues, if that's all right with you, Charlie.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, so this first one is from a JL Heza on Twitter, and they say it's time. When at my best, I'll make a salad. But last year especially, there were only certain days I could reasonably do this, as I needed time before a double lunch duty to put it together to actually sit and eat it. It takes a great effort to buy everything and make it the evening before. What would you be saying to someone who is sort of saying that to you as their problem?
100%. I completely understand that. And again, it's relative, isn't it? If you're somebody who maybe is grabbing, again, nothing wrong with sandwiches or anything like that, but maybe you're grabbing a pasty and a packet of crisps from the shop and a can of Coke or something. And if that's what you're used to doing, that's your normal, right? So to make a change to maybe making your own lunch at home, that's a bit of an uphill battle for a little while. That's a relative difficulty for you. Whereas for me, because I've got the practice in it, that, relatively speaking, for me, that's not as difficult. So again, it's about being compassionate. Where is your starting point? If you're someone who isn't used to it, it's going to take time and it's going to be a challenge. And the cliche saying of kind of, if nothing changes kind of pops into mind here. But in terms of kind of practical tips, there are loads of things that we can do with meal prep. Eating healthily doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to take lots of time with shopping. We can do all sorts of things now. We can do online shopping orders. We can kind of do click and collect in terms of actually like getting the food and bringing it back to the house. In terms of kind of making it really quick and easy, if you haven't got time for lunch, anything like a smoothie is great. You can blend a smoothie up in 5 minutes the night before. You can have that for breakfast. You can have that for lunch. It's really, really quick and easy. Things like kind of yogurt bowls, things that you can just chuck into a Tupperware that can literally take the same amount of time as walking to the shop at lunchtime, or probably even less. And in terms of kind of meal prep, again, just think about time saving here for people. Overnight oats are a great one. I know probably everyone listening has heard of overnight oats, but you literally whack it in a jar, whack it in a Tupperware, you put it in the fridge. It takes all of 5 minutes, even less probably. And then just to save time, think about kind of just cutting out your time that you need to be involved for. So obviously, if you're making a really kind of in-depth recipe, you're frying things and baking things, that's going to take a really long time. But if you think about things like one tray bakes, you whack it all in the tray, you bake it, it comes out the oven. Whilst it's in the oven, you could be marking, you could be doing emails, just using the time a little bit differently. Things like I call them one pot wonders. So curries, spag bowls, chilies, casseroles, all that kind of stuff. It goes in a pot, the lid goes on. And, you know, even things like slow cookers whilst you're out at work could be really, really handy. And in terms of kind of lunches for the next day, just making 2 portions of dinner. If you have a portion left over, put it in a Tupperware and you can take it into school. Believe me, I've been there where you literally haven't got time to get out of the room to the staff room to get to the fridge. And those days will happen. And again, it's about understanding those days and not beating yourself up for maybe making some less optimal choices on those days. But just having really quick go-tos, even in your bottom drawer. You know, you can have a bottom drawer filled up with chocolate and crisps, or you can have a bottom drawer with, you know, some rice cakes, maybe some popcorn, maybe some fruit in there, things like that. So it's just about controlling your environment and making some different choices.
Yeah, and I guess I talk about your Instagram account again, but one of the things that I found really interesting on there was I've just pulled it up now so I could look at it, and it was crisps under 100 calories, and for me, I find that really, I guess, part of this change that I can have crisps. It's just about, okay, so not the Monster Munch, which look bad on here, but actually moving to the Pom Bears, which are slightly better. If I am in that rush, if I am at the corner shop, crisps are okay, I guess, in moderation, but making a slightly better choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the word there is definitely moderation. You can have, my favourite's Pringles. Absolutely love Pringles. I could definitely sit there and go through a whole tube. But I know that I can't have a whole tube every single day. I know that maybe I'll have a few every now and then. So it is that moderation. I know a lot of us, though, when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, we've all done the CPD on fight or flight and freeze and things, and the prefrontal cortex and decision making and stuff. And when we are stressed, our brains aren't working how they normally do. So the decisions we make they are different. We're making decisions from a place where we are stressed, we are overwhelmed. So that's going to be difficult. So if you do find yourself finding it difficult to make those different choices, finding it difficult to moderate foods, looking at your environment is going to be a big one. So obviously the most optimal situation would be, putting yourself in a place where you don't have to go to the corner shop. You might go to Tesco's, bulk buy Pom, like you say, Pom Bears, or some crisps that are a little bit more in line with what you want to achieve. Filling up your cupboards, making it basically as easy to make the right decisions when you're stressed would be a big one. So controlling environment is huge there, but definitely moderation, 100%.
Okay, so here's another one for you, and this came up a lot, and it won't surprise you as a teacher yourself. This one, the person who I'm reading out from is Alison Rogers, who tweeted in saying the biscuit tin in the shared staff room, and people having birthdays and bringing in cake. Now, that must be, I guess, an absolute nightmare. Certainly for me when I was off sugar for a while, absolute nightmare seeing a staff room full of temptation, I guess. That must be something that people who you work with face.
Yeah, definitely. The staff room is a challenge. And again, it's a very individual thing. And, I only work with clients now on a one-to-one basis. We have the teachers team where we've got the community element, but I do it on a one-to-one basis because a journey and coaching around your mindset around food and fitting it in around school and teaching does need to be so individual. Because for me, I could go into the staff room, having obviously learned a lot about nutrition, having done my qualification, understanding nutrition. I can go into the staff room and I can have a slice of cake, and I can enjoy a slice of cake with coffee, and it won't affect me beyond that point. I'll enjoy it, I'll savor it, and I go about the rest of my day. I don't think twice about it, because I know how it fits as one piece of a puzzle into a much broader balanced diet. Whereas for some people, and a lot of the clients I work with have been to slimming clubs year after year, they've lost the same stone over and over again. And for some people, their relationship with food needs a bit of work. And to walk into a staff room and to be faced with all that food can really bring up some anxiety for some people. And I don't think we talk about it enough, food anxiety and relationships with food, really. But for some of my clients, if they do have a slice of cake, it's going to take, it takes a lot of work for us to get to a point where they can have a slice of cake, not feel the guilt. They can fit it into their day's worth of eating and their week's worth of eating and not feel guilty about it. So I guess the big one there, it depends on your starting point. It depends where you are along your journey. And it's never about saying absolutely no. It's never about over restricting or cutting out any foods. It's about understanding nutrition and understanding, all right, this donut's great. It's tasty. I'm going to enjoy it. But yeah, it's slightly higher in calories, slightly fewer nutrients. So I can't have a donut for breakfast, lunch and dinner. But understanding that, you could probably have a donut every single day and still be a very healthy, well-functioning person. So it is understanding that broader picture, I guess.
Now, Charlie, we've got a caller calling in. Annie Chiang. It says, Annie, are you there? I think I've just connected you. Did you have a question for us? Okay, it looks like Annie's not there. If you want to try again, Annie, or text us in your question. Sobia has texted in saying, I found when I cut out sugar, it was better for me. Sobia, I will say, certainly for myself, I went keto for a while, but I certainly feel better for it. But I think, Charlie, what I suffer from what you talked about a little of, possibly this really bad relationship with food, in that I would be fine, but it was all or nothing. And then I would have one piece of cake in the staff room and I would have 10 pieces of cake in the staff room. And, I guess I didn't have that issue around moderation that you've talked about. FOD3 is in the texted in as well and say, I was going to ask about opinions on keto. So let's go for it. Charlie, what are your opinions on that kind of keto diet? Which is quite strict, as far as my understanding of it was.
Yeah. So the keto diet, the ketogenic diet, is basically where we reduce carbohydrate intake. So there we're thinking about, potatoes, pasta, rice, crisps, chocolate, even down to kind of alcohol. All of those things are broken down into sugar on some element, even from a potato that you've boiled to chip shop chips, that the carbohydrates are sugars. So a ketogenic diet is where we reduce those carbs down, usually between the 30 grams a day to 50 grams a day. And basically what happens here is, obviously we're putting less carbohydrate into our body. So our body runs on what it's got. So it runs on proteins and it runs on fats. And the ketones that are produced, that's actually a byproduct of burning fat for fuel. Now, what this means is it's not necessarily body fat that we're burning for fuel. It could be dietary fat that we're burning for fuel. So, that's the kind of science jargony bit. What I would say to anyone is think about your lifestyle. Think about where you want to be in 5 years. Think about how you want to live. Do you want to, if you can see yourself sticking to a ketogenic diet, so eating less than kind of 30 to 50 grams of carbs a day, if you can see yourself doing that, and most importantly, being happy and healthy and balancing your lifestyle, your social life, your work, having good energy, having a really broad, balanced, healthy diet. If you can realistically see yourself doing that, then and that works for you, I would say definitely give it a go and definitely try it. I know that it's a very, very difficult diet to stick to, because a lot of the foods that we enjoy obviously contain carbohydrates. But it's very individual. I'll never say any approach is bad. The keto diet has its place with some people. There's some research to show that it can actually help those with epilepsy. But it's about you. It's about you as an individual. What can you realistically feel like you can sustain? Because we don't want to adopt a diet for a month and then hop to another diet, then hop to another diet. We want to build your diet. We want you to have your diet that's going to keep you happy, healthy, and fueled ultimately. So if it's up to you, what do you believe about your lifestyle? If you think you can do it, then yeah, go for it. Give it a try. If it doesn't work, that's absolutely fine as well. No judgment, always compassion with yourself. But I know for the vast majority of the population, it's very, very tricky. And sometimes also it means that we can be reducing our fiber intake quite low, which means we can sometimes have some digestive problems. And ultimately, it can hinder your social life, because obviously if you're going out for meals and things, very, very rarely are there keto options on the menu, unless you have, steak with just veg and you take away the chips. You can obviously adapt things like that. But I would say my advice would be, it's up to you. It's your diet. What do you think that you would enjoy?
Yeah, and as I say, having done keto for a while, I would definitely second that about the kind of, having a social life with it, because certainly for me, I did it over a period of lockdown, and so it was only really me cooking for myself. It was only really me looking after myself. And then as soon as things started opening up again, it got so much harder. Restaurants started opening up, started seeing people again. And yeah, that lifestyle that was maintainable for me. Keto on lockdown was maintainable for me. I just don't know if I'll be able to go. I certainly aren't at the moment, but if I would be able to maintain that in an unlocked world.
Definitely.
Okay, so we are coming towards the end of the first half of the show, Charlie, and I have some sort of, I guess, quick fire myth busting questions for you. So if you're happy, we're going to whiz through them. We'll keep them nice and short, under a minute, I guess, if we can, for each answer. As I say, we don't want to bump into the news too much because there's interesting things happening. But here we go. Are you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. Healthy diets are boring.
Again, what does healthy mean to you? Does it mean 80-20 split between whole foods and kind of maybe some more processed, maybe higher calorie, less nutrient dense foods? What's your healthy is the question there. And it definitely doesn't have to be, it might take a bit of learning, might take some kind of playing around with recipes, but eating healthy definitely doesn't have to be boring. It could be tasty, it could be interesting. It's about learning different recipes, learning how to cook differently.
Okay. Eating healthily is a lot of prep.
It can feel like that. I totally get that. It's definitely going to be more prep than a microwave meal or a takeaway. But again, going back to what I said earlier, it's all relative. If at the moment you're only having microwave meals, then anything is going to seem like a lot of prep. But there are a few kind of things that we can put in place just to make it a little bit easier, make it a little bit quicker. Again, frozen veg is fantastic. That can make it easier to prep. Smoothies are great. Oat bowls, overnight oats, one tray bakes, slow cookers, one pot wonders, like I said earlier, those curries and spag bowls and pasta. All of those kinds of things can make it easier and make it take less time.
Okay, on to our next one. Right, it means missing treats.
Now this is a big one for me. I've got a bit of a pet peeve with certain words around food. So foods like words like good, bad, you're allowed this is naughty, it's a cheat day, it's a treat. They can really subconsciously put us on this very slippery slope to these negative relationships with food. So first of all, it certainly doesn't mean missing out on those maybe super tasty, those hedonic, highly palatable foods. It doesn't mean missing out on those. It might mean having less of them, but it shouldn't mean reducing them, restricting them completely out your diet. But again, I think on that one, definitely is that vocabulary around food is a big one on there. But there's no right or wrong with nutrition, really. So if you want to have 75% of your food coming from those healthier sources and 25% of your food coming from donuts, crisps, chocolate, that's okay. That can work. You can be healthy with that kind of diet.
Yeah, I've just connected Annie O'Neill, who's just joined us, who is our speaker after news. Hi, Annie.
Hi.
Hi, are you
You
okay?
can hear me.
Yeah,
Yes,
we can
thank
hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic.
Did you want to ask Charlie a question, or are you just getting in early?
I was getting in early, but I would quite like to ask him a question, if that's okay.
Sure, shoot.
Charlie, what do you say to teachers when they say to you, I don't have time for lunch? There's no way that I can get that break and have time for lunch, because we hear that quite a lot.
Yeah, that is a big one, and I think I've definitely been there. Like I said earlier, you literally can't get out of the room. You've got so much to do in that 45 minutes or that 50 minutes that you are almost confined to that room. I would say at some point there's got to be a change. Looking long term, there's got to be a change where you give yourself, you get really strict with yourself and you say, right, I'm a human being. I need a change of scene. I need at least 5 minutes to change my scene, to go to the loo, to get a glass of water. And sometimes it is about setting a new standard for yourself and saying, right, regardless, it's almost a non-negotiable. I know that word is thrown around way too much in teaching, but it's a new standard for my health. I'm regardless between, as soon as the children go out, I absolutely go out for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, part of that could be getting to the staff room, grabbing something out of the fridge, and then we can maybe eat as we work. Again, that's not ideal in my opinion, from a well-being and a workload and a mental health perspective. It's definitely not ideal, but finding something that maybe you can keep in the fridge, or you could even keep in your bottom drawer in your classroom, that is very, very quick to eat. So again, not optimal, but something like that's filling, quick and easy to eat. Popcorn, rice cakes and fruit, something like that with a glass of water, because it's so easy and it can last in your bottom drawer. That could be a go-to. But I do think at some point something would have to change with that. And it may be asking a colleague to help you out. You say to your co-teacher, or you say to someone in your team, all right, come and get me at this time every single day, and just make me leave the room for 5 minutes. Don't take no for an answer. Make me go to the staff room. And then if you are really struggling for time, things like smoothies, fruit smoothies, maybe a scoop of protein in there, or some Greek yogurt or something for a protein source. Something's very quick and easy could work there. But I think that needs it does need looking at, I think, from a mental perspective as well.
And I definitely would, I guess, step in there. And as a deputy head, I was a deputy head of a primary school, and I would say, if you are in that situation, tell leadership, because looking after your well-being. And I know we're focusing this episode a lot on what we can do as individuals, but at some point, if you're not finding time to eat, that is affecting your well-being, then your line managers, your school leaders will want to know about it, hopefully, and hopefully we'll do something about it to support you as well on a kind of school level, because there is individual responsibility, but there's also school as well. Now, Annie's actually, that was almost exactly what was next on my Mythbusters question. So I do have one more for you, Charlie, before we have to go to the news, and that is, Charlie, I'll start next week.
Yeah, that's a really, really common one. And without kind of diving too much into kind of coaching and almost the psychology of it, I guess, as humans, we like to be safe, don't we? We like equilibrium. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we don't really like change. The body, the brain likes to stay the same. We like what we know, and we know what we like. So this is often a way that people kind of almost self-sabotage. It's a bit of a safety mechanism, I guess, where we put off making a change, because if we don't risk anything, if we don't risk changing something, we know what we're going to get. The outcome's already secure. And as teachers, we've got so much uncertainty around us, particularly in the last year or so, whereby we don't really want to risk much more. We don't really want to have any more uncertainty. So just by saying I'll start next week, and just putting that start date off each week, putting it into a future, that's almost like future me's problem. I don't have to deal with that now. And this absolutely not a criticism, because I did this for years and years and years in lots and lots of different ways. And it's almost like our brain is disguising fear as practicality. We can always find a practical reason why we can't start, can't we? It's money, it's time, it's an event, whatever. But it doesn't have to be this huge, and I hope this is kind of the message I've got across today. It doesn't have to be this huge, perfect overhaul of, chicken, broccoli and rice and doing 5K a day. And it doesn't have to be that. It can be a tiny change. Instead of having that coffee, maybe have a glass of water. Instead of having Coca-Cola, maybe have some squash. Instead of having a takeaway, just try cooking just one meal. If you're on the phone, just try walking around. Instead of, grabbing a muffin when you go to Costa, take your own little snack with you. It doesn't need to be kind of, one huge overhaul change, which is very daunting. And often that's where people say, I'll start next week. Just try doing something really small today. Just a tiny, tiny, tiny change that it's almost so small that you can't argue with it. And then just build it up 1% each day.
And I would say, that is the thing that I certainly am taking away from this, Charlie. So thank you so much for calling in. Now, if people want to reach out and find you, they can find you on Instagram at the Teacher's Health Coach. Any last messages before we head off to the news?
No, that's absolutely great. I just want to say a really big thank you for having me. It's been great chatting to you today.
No, it's been wonderful. So thank you a lot. Now, we are heading off to the news now. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Annie O'Neill from OM Health and Wellbeing Consultancy about things that schools can do to support not just their pupils, but their staff's wellbeing as well. So I will see you on the other side of the news, everyone.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News. The government has announced a new global teacher training qualification, enabling teaching trainees to study abroad and achieve international qualified teacher status, or IQTS. The opportunity will also allow teachers from other countries who hold IQTS to teach in UK schools. The Department for Education says it must ensure a robust inspection regime for the success of the course, and applicants need a grade 4 or equivalent in English at GCSE and to have completed part of their education in England. Parents and students at a Highland school have successfully appealed the local council's decision to only provide unisex toilets at their school. The reasons given behind the protest were that younger students and their much older peers were required to mix, and concerns about number of sanitary bins and facilities available. On Sunday, the Highland Council agreed to return to separate toilets for boys and girls, whilst also providing one block of unisex toilets. A school in the south of Scotland has been forced to close due to a COVID outbreak mere days into the new term. The decision came as 8 members of staff were in isolation. The school is expected to reopen on Thursday. That was your latest Teachers Talk Radio News.
Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TT Radio. Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TT Radio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
Borada Pau, Croeso i Abertawe. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Swansea. It is me, Nathan Ginn, on the Twilight Show this beautiful Wednesday on Teachers Talk Radio. And if you missed the start of the show, we were talking to Charlie, the teacher's coach, about nutrition and about healthy living and about, I guess, finding a sustainable way to do that as teachers, and really understanding what the challenges teachers face. In the second half of the show, I'm joined by Annie O'Neill and Sue Miller of OM Health and Wellbeing Consultancy, and they help schools to support pupils and staff with wellbeing. Welcome, Annie. Welcome, Sue.
Hello, thank you
Hi.
for having us. So I suppose we should just say, so I'm Annie, so I'm the
Sue.
posh one.
And I'm the northern one.
Sue's the northern one.
Yeah.
So thank you for having us.
No, absolute pleasure. I'm just writing down there, Annie, posh, Sue, northern.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I've put that down on my notes. So can you tell our listeners, I guess, a little bit about the work that you currently do through OM Health and Wellbeing?
So we do quite a lot of different things in schools. You're absolutely right. We support health and wellbeing, and we do that both with pupils and with teachers. You know, I'm just thinking back to the conversation with Charlie earlier about people who can't leave their classroom because they can't go and have lunch. You know what? Wellbeing starts right at the top of the pie, right at the top of the tree, and you know they need to be setting and being that role model. You know, does the head teacher have lunch? Does senior leadership team all go and get lunch at the same time? So we do a lot around supporting the whole school community. So we work with teachers one-to-one with training. We do some delivery of RSE with the new curriculum. We work with parents. So it's a real range, isn't it? Did I miss anything out, Sue?
Yeah, I think no. I mean, we go in. Our role mainly is a public health role. We are public health nurses, and that's where we originated from. So the whole idea is that we go in, and as Annie said, support teachers doing sessions where we will do sessions where we do a whole host, on different subjects. But then we do one-to-ones with teachers as well, SRE to primary schools and secondary schools, and one-to-ones with parents. So it's very diverse what we do.
So I guess my question would be, how did you get started in this? Did you see a gap in the market? Was it that, you saw that there was a need in schools for this kind of work? Because I have to say, it's not something that I've had in a school that I work at before.
Well, Annie and I are both nurses and have been nurses for quite a number of years, me a few more than Annie.
A lot more, actually.
A lot. And as you know, we are public health nurses and have been school nurses for quite a number of years prior to setting up OM. And yes, what we felt really was that school nursing is a public health role, but what was happening is it was becoming more of a firefighting role and much more safeguarding, and we were losing that public health feel. So Annie and I just decided 4 years ago now, Annie, nearly 5 actually, isn't it?
Nearly 5.
That we would jump and decided to give it a go and see if we could make a go of taking that public health role into schools. And like any business, it grows. But we've been astounded by the amount of people that have actually wanted our service. And there's a real need for the public health nurse within the school community.
Because I think we were, as school nurses, we found that actually we weren't doing any of the preventative work. What we were doing, as Sue said, was being really reactive. Whereas what we do with OM Health and Wellbeing is that we go in and we try to do some of the preventative stuff. So we talk about, how to look after your own well-being and what are the best things to do. And actually, rather than waiting until someone is in crisis and struggling, we try to get people to be thinking about it way before they get to that point. So really going in and doing all the preventative things rather than doing we've got a problem and how can we solve it. We try to get in earlier than that and try and give some really practical top tips about actually what can you do that really helps with well-being to look after your own well-being, both as teachers and as pupils.
Yeah.
And also with parents giving them enabling them putting some gain that instead of when it comes to crisis, giving parents things that they can do to try and sort out problems that they may be having with their young people as well. So,
well, when we talk about schools, do you think that, particularly teachers and certainly in some of the roles that I've had, that there is a specific need within schools for this kind of thing. And I guess I'm getting at is, I think back to, I have been a assistant head, been a deputy head of a primary school where I have had to call the police because of violent conduct of parents, towards staff. So I've been in those confrontations. I have been in situations with violent, threatening children. I have done, I'm physical restraint trained and have had to physically restrain children. I'm also a DSL, so all of the things that come with that. Am I at risk as a teacher, as I guess in any position? Am I at greater risk of kind of my mental well-being being affected by my job?
I think teachers cope with so much. It's become over the years more and more. It's not just about teaching. We spend a lot of time in schools, and as teachers, we know that you're everything to those children. For a lot of the children, you're doing some parenting. You're looking after their well-being. Feeding them, clothing them at times, etc.
Uniform.
All of that. So, as a teacher, you wear so many different caps, and that impacts after, and, especially in the last 18 months, that has increased more and more. But you're also looking after the young people's well-being as well, and children and young people's well-being, and often the parents' well-being as well. So as a teacher, I have a big thing that, you are the foundation stone. And if that foundation stone becomes wobbly, then everybody else wobbles. So, it's imperative to be looking after your own well-being, to be able to deal with everybody else's well-being in a way. And, most teachers have not only that community within schools, most of them have families outside. And again, they have to be strong for that as well. So, I think they get it from all ends, and teachers need some more support. I think what we found, Annie, haven't we, when we've gone into school, that there is very, barring, the people within the school community, there is very little support for teachers within the school.
And I think it's about that thing about, how do you look after your own well-being to make sure you're in that best position to then support, the young people and the children around you. And sometimes it can be, it's a tricky job. I don't think anybody goes into teaching thinking it's going to be a breeze.
No,
and it's going to be 9 to 5 and wow, 13 weeks holiday. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Most of the teachers that we work with, they haven't just had 6 weeks holiday.
No.
Some of them, if they're lucky, will have had a week away, a couple of weeks away, and they've been working the rest of the time. And, as Sue said, in the last 18 months, with all of the different things that have been happening around COVID and the change, the almost constant changing landscape about what is required of schools in terms of testing and all of those sorts of things, teachers have worked their socks off. It's a stressful job. It really is. It's a sort of job where you do need to be looking after yourself. And one of the things that we do is we do work with some trainee teachers to try and get them to start thinking really on in their career. How do I look after myself so I don't get burnout? Because there is, I think we were looking at some statistics recently where a really huge proportion of teachers in the last 2 years, 18 months, are considering changing career. And that would be really sad to lose, people from the profession. But, I think teachers are one of the professions where they make work the most unpaid overtime of any other professions that we see, because they want to do, you go into teaching because you want to make a difference to children, don't you? You want to make their lives better. You want to make things better. And sometimes that's to the detriment of their own well-being, I think.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, someone shared with me a quote picture thing on Twitter this week when I was talking a little bit about well-being, and I was saying, the teachers, the children don't need a martyr; they need a happy, healthy teacher. And someone sent me a picture, and it was kind of this lovely graphic and a candle, and I'm sure well-meaning, but it said something like, "A teacher is a candle that lights others' flames whilst consuming itself." And I was kind of like, hang on, very true. Consuming itself. That's as a message, what are we saying about, ourselves? And it had been put out there as like, this is what new teachers, this is what you should be aiming for. And I was like, please let's not consume ourselves.
No, it's dreadful.
Because you know, you're human, and actually there needs to be that balance there. There needs to be, but there is, I think, you know, a lot of teachers are in it because they want to make a difference and they want to help that young person or that child. And it is sometimes you do need to take a step back and think, actually, I need to look after myself here because I don't think I'm.
One of the services we do provide in schools is we do offer, I mean, we do wellbeing sessions for groups of teachers, but we also provide one-to-one sessions for teachers. Now, for some teachers, that's just a time to talk and talk about whatever's troubling them. But other time, for the head teachers and often the senior leadership team, we offer supervision. But they are very different. But for the teachers, for me, that one-to-one, being able to talk to somebody who isn't doing your, appraisal and isn't going to take it in the wrong way, but somebody who is, it's confidential within safeguarding reasons, but somebody who is just a listening ear and somewhere to go with some of the concerns you've got really helps teachers. And we've had some really positive feedback. And I think that is one of the services we provide, that time to talk for teachers that really helps with their wellbeing. It's somewhere to go because Annie and I, we're nurses, and in nursing, we are supervised beyond supervised. Yeah, we are. Yeah. We get safeguarding supervision, we get peer supervision, we get caseload supervision. We get lots and lots of supervision. But in education, you don't.
It doesn't happen.
Can you just go into? Sorry, because strangely enough, my sister happens to work in Suffolk in a school that you work with, and she said to me about, we were talking about the kind of things that we have to deal with as leaders and as teachers, and she said supervision, and I honestly had never heard this phrase before. And I was like, no, I'm a DSL. And she was like, but don't they offer you? But you must hear horrible stuff. Do they not, offer you? And I was like, no. What is this? Can you kind of just explain a little about what's you mean by supervision?
Well, I suppose it's when you do hear this horrible stuff, actually, what do you do with it? Where do you put that in terms of in your head? How do you, and you do as DSL, as a teacher, you come across cases, children, young people, where actually they play on your mind because you think about them and there's stuff that's happened and it's going through your head. And supervision is really a safe space for you to go and to just be able to have some time to talk about those things, to reflect on them, to maybe think about, actually, could I have done that differently? If I'd done that differently, what would the outcome have been? And maybe get to the point where you think, actually, you know what, I did everything that I could and I couldn't have done anything more. Or should I be just, maybe thinking about doing that in a slightly different way? But being with somebody to talk to that you trust, that is going to be non-judgmental, that maybe is going to challenge a little bit to say, what do you think about that? And would you have done that differently if this had happened? And just having some space to be able to not have it sitting in your head. Does that make sense? Have I explained that?
No, yeah, it really does. And one of the things that I remember about my most recent practice, and I was a deputy head at a really challenging school that had done really poorly, had poor behaviour, and we were parachuted in, the head teacher and myself as a deputy, to help out. And I remember, one of the things, I was restraint trained. I don't necessarily agree with that as a thing, but in some situations, and there were situations where it was necessary. There were situations where we had to have the police come to site.
Absolutely.
But I remember filling in the physical restraint form, and there was a little box at the bottom saying something like, have you been offered a debrief? Did you take up the debrief? And I just remember flicking back through all the forms, and it was just no, yeah, yes offered, no, yes offered, no, and no one had taken up, yet we had been spat at, bitten, all of these things. And you're right, I don't know where I put that as a teacher.
And I think it's sorry,
Hannah.
You go.
Well, no, I was going to say that I think the two main, I think you desperately need that. And I think one of the things we've recently started doing, a lot of our schools have got trauma-informed practitioners now, which deal with a lot of the children that you're talking about, and the incidents. And what they have, it's been, when they did the courses, it was recommended that they had supervision 3 times a year, which in my book is probably not often enough, but at least 3 times a year. But then when they looked at it, it was, where do we get this supervision from? And actually, that's one of the services we provide for them. But again, it's doing that whole bit of looking at, it's the debriefing, it's the things that happen that, you need to talk about, that you don't really want to take home and talk to your other half about, or you can't take home and talk to your other half about. So where do you go with it? And I think it's really important for people to do that. Otherwise, you're internalizing a lot of that, and that, not being able to express it and say how you felt about things can often lead to, physical unhealth. It doesn't help. It can impact on your emotional health, your mental health, and your physical health. So it's a really important thing to do, supervision, as far as we're concerned.
And I guess it kind of brings us a bit full circle. One of the things that I often say, and a lot of the areas I work in alternative provision now, and one of the things that we use co-regulation a lot to help with pupil behaviour and help them understand where they are at. And one of the things I often say to people is that you can't expect staff to co-regulate if they are not regulating themselves. And one of the things that I've seen you guys sort of saying is about putting your oxygen mask on first, I guess. And I guess it's part of that is these general structures you're talking about of being preemptive, preventative measures.
Absolutely, it is. If you don't put your own oxygen mask on first, you're going to end up being the one that dies when the plane goes down. You can't pour from an empty cup. There's loads of metaphors, aren't there, that we could say, but it is really about, without looking after yourself, if you're not in when you've got a child that is distressed or behaving in a way that shows that they're distressed, actually the best thing that you can do as the adult is not to join in by being, joining in that chaos with them. It's about taking the way to help them co-regulate is to be calm yourself. And actually, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not sleeping and you've got lots of stuff going on at home and you're not looking after yourself properly, that's a really hard thing to do sometimes. Really hard.
We've had a text in from Autism, ADHD and me saying, talking about stuff helps get it out instead of having it trapped in your head. And I think, they've really hit on something there with, particularly in teaching, that there is sometimes a hero mentality. There is sometimes, this idea of, I'm burning myself out for them, or, you've got to think of the children. And we've talked to, sorry, go on.
Sorry, Nathan. I was going to say the other thing that Sue, we were talking about this just the other day. The other thing that we've noticed that quite a lot of teachers are quite, are perfectionists.
Absolutely.
And actually desperately want to do the best that they possibly can, but in a way almost set themselves up to struggle because they want to do everything. And actually there comes a point where, and I think this is about supervision, that it's being able to have a conversation with someone and recognize that actually, that you've done enough. You can't,
and that you're good enough.
It's good enough. You don't have to do anymore. It doesn't have to be perfect. And realizing that actually there are some things out there that are within you can control, and they're the things you need to concentrate on. And other stuff, you just need to do your best, change what you can, but then the other stuff you need to sort of let that go, really.
I often say that to young teachers. I say when I'm talking to younger teachers, newer teachers, and I'll say you just have to learn sometimes good enough is good enough.
Good enough.
I had a teacher who I was talking to, and I liked what she said, and it was a slight twist on that, where she said, I've decided that what I need to do to myself is I need to say to myself, my good enough is good enough.
Okay,
I like that.
And that thing about it may not be perfect, but if it's good enough, my good enough.
Nathan, just back to the supervision a minute, and I think it's really, really important, because I think for any of whether it's supervision, time to talk, or anything, is got to come from the top. And I think that's one of the things we emphasize in our schools on every time we go in, that, you know, the head teacher has, because I think if the head teacher isn't taking up the offer and getting, you know, supervision or having somebody to talk to, conversations, people below them think, oh, well, I shouldn't. You know, the head teacher is that person that, you know, that everybody looks to. And if it's, you know, and I think it's really important that as a head teacher, you're saying, you know, I'm doing it and it's okay for everybody else to do it. Because I think that sends a really good message out.
Yeah, I think they worry that it's a sign of weakness, that they're not coping. And I think if the senior leadership team model that actually, you know what, it's okay to do this and it's not seen as a sign of weakness, that is really powerful.
Yeah, certainly. And, you know, I don't know if you heard my little rant at the end of talking to Charlie about, you know, if people don't have time to eat. And I think there is, at some point, we have to say it's not an individual's responsibility. It is, you know, a school's responsibility to look after their staff. But what I am going to try and get you to do is transition back a little bit to the individual, because I am aware that there are some schools, and some of our teachers, I guess, will be in what, you know, they sometimes get termed as toxic schools. They won't have someone like yourselves coming in to support them. They won't be lucky enough to have a school that is valuing it in that way. But what are some of the things that you would suggest that a teacher could do for themselves to start taking some of those preemptive measures, I guess, even if their school structure wasn't allowing it at the moment?
So
well, we're great. Go on. You go, Annie.
So you go.
Start.
No, you go.
No, I was going to say we're great believers in, first of all, the 5 Department of Health have 5 ways to well-being. And I think that, for me, is one of the key things to looking after your own well-being. And you know, there are 5 things. One is connecting with people, the importance of talking to other people and connecting. Not, you know, if you're going home at night, if you're a young teacher who lives by themselves and you go home at night, you close that door and you spend all night on their box, you know, be it on a laptop or whatever, and never see anybody till the next morning, it is not good for your well-being. So connecting with people is really important. Doing some form of exercise. Exercise really helps with our well-being. When we exercise, our bodies produce a hormone called serotonin. And serotonin is that feel-good factor. It's the body's natural antidepressant. It's really good. So doing some form, and we're not suggesting teachers have to join the gym, but going out, you know, doing some form of exercise 3 times a week for about 20, 30 minutes that makes your heart beat a bit faster, makes you a bit sweaty, is good, is really, really good for well-being. Learning a new skill. Now, we know teachers are learning all the time, but learning a new skill is, again, you know, I used to say to people during COVID, learn to knit, learn to do, you know, Annie you started doing painting, didn't you, Annie?
I did. I started
during
doing
lockdown. You know,
painting.
just learning something different, continual learning actually helps with our well-being. Giving, you know, it's really important, that altruistic giving, you know, and we're not suggesting they have to, you know, volunteer and, you know, go out and do big things, but just actually, you know, making a cup of tea for somebody else in the staff room, you know, just giving a little bit, smiling at somebody sometimes can just be enough. But that altruistic thing about giving. And Annie, I've forgotten the 5th one. This is
Take notice.
Take notice.
Take notice.
So, thank you, Dad.
Take notice of the world around you.
Yeah. And, you know, if you're going out for a vigorous walk, instead of thinking about all the things that you should have been doing, you're supposed to be doing, what am I planning for tomorrow, it's about noticing the birds singing, you know, what colour the flowers are, etc., and just being mindful. And I think that's one of my top things, but we have quite a few. I'm sure Annie will come up with more now.
I think one of the things that I would say, especially for teachers, is to actually think about setting some boundaries for yourself. So, you know, if you know, you're not getting that support from the school, actually thinking, I'm going to set my own personal boundaries here and making some decisions about, you know what, I'm going to make sure that one day in the weekend, I'm not going to do any work at all. I'm not going to pick up my laptop. You know, maybe I'm going to work on a Saturday, but I'm going to make sure I have all day Sunday where I don't work. And sitting and thinking, okay, I'm going to put a boundary in so that after, I don't know, a particular time in the evening, I'm not going to work past that time. And I know that workload is really tricky to manage, but I think if you're not getting that sort of support from your senior leadership team from school, actually trying to think, I'm going to put in some boundaries for myself and see and that talk to other teachers who are more experienced than you, who've been doing it for longer. They will give you some ideas and be able to give you some support about how to manage the workload, because it is tricky, it is tough, it's one of those things where it's hard to juggle everything and make it all fit in. Because I think one of the things about teaching is that it's never done. The job is never done. There's always something else you could do. There's always something else you could add on. There is always something else that you could be looking at or watching or bringing into that lesson. And actually, I suppose it's back to that perfectionism, but actually saying, I'm going to put some personal boundaries in, and 3 nights a week, I'm going to close my laptop at 9 o'clock and I'm not going to look at it again.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Coming into that is that self-talk as well, isn't it? That being kind to yourself as well. We're great believers in the self-talk that you do in your head. And, when we talk to teachers, when we talk to anybody, we all have that voice in our head saying, you should do better, you're not doing good enough, you're rubbish, you're this, you're that. And it's about something.
Is it that there's something about being in the staff room? It's doing that compare and despair in the staff room.
Yeah.
Where you go into the staff room and think everybody else is doing a much better job.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah. How many people do we talk to with imposter syndrome? But I think it's that being nice to yourself, being your own, starting to just be your own best friend. Just talk to yourself a bit kinder instead of berating yourself and having a go at yourself about what you're not doing and how bad, what terrible job you're doing or whatever. It's about just being kind to yourself. I think two of the big things we talk about is self-talk and being kind to yourself, and the other one is what's in your control. Is it in your control? And if it isn't in your control, if it's in your circle of concern and you can't do anything about it, let it go and concentrate on what's in your circle of control.
And I guess, one of the things that I wanted to ask about, I guess, from Charlie, the teacher health coach who was on in the first half of the show, and he was talking about diet and nutrition and things, but he talked about, I guess, pinch points, he called them, or kind of crisis points in the year, in the calendar for staff, which I guess would affect, be same for the kind of work that you are talking about. That I know that, the run up to exam week is going to be tough for me. Should I be thinking about my year as a whole in that sense, or planning in time around it?
I think that's a really tricky one, because I think I think there has to be some forward planning, but one of the things that I think we need to really think about and try to concentrate on is actually, today and tomorrow, and not trying to do too much forward thinking, because I think that tends to make us quite anxious. When we're thinking about, oh my goodness, how am I going to cope with the exam week? I'm not coping, this is going to be really tricky. But also having that bit where you do a little bit of thinking ahead to know, actually, that week's going to be really tough, or that week's going to be hard, because I know that, it's the week after SATs, or, or the week up to SATs, and all of that sort of stuff. But I think, trying, it's a bit like trying to be, quite often we can't predict it. We're not good at predicting the future, and quite often if we do a lot of forward thinking, it makes
overthinking
us really anxious.
Yeah, it does.
Overthinking.
But I think you can
cope.
I think you can put some things in to help your well-being. If you know that that's a particularly tricky week, and every year, that week's going to be it's a really a week where everything is, going at 100 miles an hour, I think it's really important then to put some things in place that really help with your well-being, things that make you feel better. So when you do get home from work, you do take some me time, that you are making sure that you're still able to get out and have a walk and clear your head a bit, and just putting extra things in just to help with your well-being, to make you feel fitter, to be able to cope with what's going on in those particularly busy times of the year.
And I guess then, so, you know, I could be, I guess, building up a reserve, I guess, so that I know that if something does happen, you know, I'm not waiting for something bad to happen for me to then go for a walk. If I'm regularly maintaining my health.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we talk a lot about it being on a bit of a scale, and you know that scale is like 0, actually everything's absolutely fine, and 10 is I feel really overwhelmed and I'm really struggling here, and I'm, you know, going to crisis point. And you know, normally, depending on what's going on during the day, we might go up to a 2 or 3 or 4, something like that, and then something will happen that makes us go up to a 6. I don't know, you spill your coffee on somebody's book, or you know, somebody cuts you up in the car and you sort of nudge up to a 6 or a 7, but then what happens is that you come back down again to sit around a 2 or 3, something like that. If you're not doing all the things that help with well-being, and you get to this point in your year, that pinch point, and you're already sitting up at number 5, it doesn't take much to nudge you up to number 10 where you feel really overwhelmed. Whereas if you're doing things on a regular basis, actually it helps to keep you sitting at around a sort of 1, 2, 3, something like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think we have a
cope
toolbox,
much better
don't
with those
we?
things. Yeah,
We always
do.
say, you know, have a toolbox of things that you can do, so you can dip into that toolbox. You know, we talk about breathing exercises, mindful exercises, meditation, whatever suits that individual person, and having your own toolbox of things you know helps you. Does what Annie says, it brings that number back down. So, you know, it may be that, you know, if you are, you know, somebody has cut you up in the car, you just have to do some real 4, 5, 6 breathing that just relaxes you a little bit, and learning techniques that will actually help. It really does help with well-being. For the, you know, so that you have got something that, and we use toolboxes not just with teachers, we use them with pupils as well. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're 14 or 40. You know, a lot of the techniques that we teach are exactly the same and help with that feelings when you're feeling overwhelmed or when you're feeling anxious.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's what I think will, I don't know, I guess maybe surprise people from outside the profession of teaching would be how much teachers know about some of these things that we impart onto children. You know, so we give them these tools, we give them these skills, and yet somehow we don't necessarily embody it ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we'll be saying to children that they need to get to bed early, and then we'll be staying up late ourselves and stressing about something, or we'll be, you know, asking them to do their meditative kind of breathing exercise or their calming activities when we're still shouting and screaming at someone, you know, in the car on the way into work. And it does always strike me that, you know, we maybe haven't, as a profession, fully made the transition to where you are working with the schools you are working with now, that have a kind of more whole school approach towards well-being and mental health.
Well, I think if it doesn't come from, and again we're back to that, you know what, that if it doesn't come from the top, you know, we work with the Multi-Academy Trust, and actually the CEO and the senior leadership team for the Multi-Academy Trust have all attended one of our wellbeing training sessions, because it filters down from the top. I mean, we go into lots of different schools. We can probably tell you, we'll have a rough idea about how stressed the head is within about 15 minutes of walking into the school. Yeah. Because it all just filters down through the staff and then to the children. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, I would certainly say from my experience, and I generally have specialised in dealing with schools where behaviour is an issue, that 90% of the time, a lot of the improvement that you make in behaviour is not around strategies for dealing with behaviour. It's around the staff feeling calmer, the staff feeling more in control, you know, the staff feeling in a better place, and I don't want to sound too airy fairy about it and say, you know, this negative energy, but it really is for me, you know, that it does get passed on. You know, you are shorter with the children are shorter with you. That, you know, that happens. And so, yeah, if the head teacher is doing it and the middle leaders are feeding it through to the class teachers, to the children, I think it does build a better, you know, you see impact from it. And I think people are starting to see it. Now, listen, I'm afraid we are going to have to go. We've got one more ad break before we finish up the show. It's been so lovely to talk to you. So Annie O'Neill and Sue Miller from OM Health and Wellbeing Consultancy. Was there any message you wanted to give to our listeners just before we head off for our last ad break?
It's really, I mean, I think just
Look
for
after
me,
yourself.
yeah, your well-being is massively important. And I think, you know, it's become more important as we've lived through the last 18 months in what we've lived through. Well-being is, you know, it's what keeps us well. And that's your physical and your mental, your emotional health. And they're all connected. Don't ever think that we're not connected, because we are.
Yep, and look after yourself first, and then you'll be better at looking after the kids, I guess.
Other people.
Yeah,
100%.
certainly.
Yes.
Well, we're going to go to the ad breaks now, and so thank you so much for being our guest tonight. And off we go to the ads.
Thank you.
Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsia puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.CRE8TIVEresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TT Radio. Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TT Radio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
And croeso I abertaw I bore pawb. Well, I guess I should say nostar as it is getting into the night. We have been here on Teachers Talk Radio on the Twilight Show with Nathan Ginn, talking with Charlie, the teacher's health coach, about nutrition, about healthy living. And we have been talking with Annie O'Neill and Sue Miller from OM Health and Wellbeing about the things we can do to protect our own mental health and well-being as teachers. Now, if you have missed the show, don't worry, you can visit ttradio.org/listenback, where you can listen back to not only this show, but any of our shows. If you missed out earlier this evening in hearing from the slightly more handsome Jack Black from Rocksteady Music School, you can find that on the Drive Time show this evening. So listen back to that. Or if you want to stay with us for more shows this evening, then you can. So from me, it is a nostar, a good night from here in Swansea, and thank you and goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.